I knew from that very moment that I could not go through the rest of my life. I could not work like this until I was 60 and then finally enjoy my retirement at that point in my life. I had to make a change.
Steve and Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you so much.
I am thrilled to have you on. I've read a lot about you, watched your videos, and maybe to start, so folks can get an idea of what you guys are all about, maybe you could start by telling us where you're recording this from right now.
We are recording this from a little 1,000 square foot off-grid house in the middle of the Arizona desert. No hookups. We have solar panels outside that deliver our power. We have propane delivered every couple of years because we have such a big tank. We have a well on site. So we live in this self-contained little abode, I guess, just out here in the middle of nowhere, where it's nice and quiet and we get to see the sunsets every night. And it's just a magical place to live.
So do we have to worry about this interview getting cut off because your solar energy runs out? How does that work?
Not because of the solar. We have plenty of power with the solar. Internet connection and cell phone connection out in the desert can be interesting, but we should be okay.
So is that all satellite, I assume?
Well, we were waiting for Starlink, but Elon Musk is dragging his feet like crazy. So we actually recently switched from Verizon, which has very, very cluttered cell towers, to a T-Mobile service. Yeah. So that's
cell service.
That's what
internet.
we use over the T-Mobile cell network, which works pretty well for us.
Yeah.
So how far away is your closest neighbor?
Not that far. Closest, we have neighbors around us. We have some right behind our house so we have 7 acres, but they're probably 3 or 4 from us. But then any kind of convenience, on the other hand, is much, much farther away. Our closest grocery store is 45 minutes away. So that's...
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever people hear that, it's surprising to them that we have to drive so far to go to a grocery store. But I found we actually drive less here because every time we do go out, we do more. We do everything we want to do each time we go out. Whereas in a city, I found that we were going out every single day. We were driving a lot. But here we go out maybe once a week and that's it. Yeah. So in many ways, I think we actually, for whatever reason, we actually drive less living so far away from a grocery store than we did living in the city.
So how do you get Domino's pizza delivered? That would be my big question. I don't know.
No delivery. There's no Grubhub or any of that stuff out here. So few restaurants.
I can't think of the last time I had Domino's. I don't know why I use that as an example. So you guys retired at what age?
I was 35 and my wife was 32. I want to 32. Yes, 32.
Okay, so I'd like to kind of explore that. I know, Steve, from things you've written, you were both in IT, in tech, right?
Yes. I was doing software development and my wife was
I have an engineering background, but I coded for a living.
Yep.
Okay. I know at least from things, Steve, that you've written, and Courtney, maybe this was you as well, I don't know, but that when you sort of went into the workforce, early retirement was the last thing on your mind. You weren't a particularly big saver. I mean, I think you said you saved some minimum amount in your 401k. So at some point that obviously changed. When did that change and what caused the change?
Well, for the first 7 or 8 years of my career, I saved the bare minimum, which was my company match. And that was 4%. So I was saving 4% in my traditional 401k. I think I had an IRA, Roth IRA as well, which I was saving a couple percentage of my salary there. But really, it wasn't that much. I just saved the bare minimum and spent the rest because I thought, that's what you do. I'm working full time. I'm a professional. I'm making lots of money, so I can spend some money and enjoy my life. So that's kind of how I rationalized it to myself. But there came a point in my life where I came to a fork in the road, and I could remember this like it was yesterday. I walked out into my garage. I think it was a Saturday morning, and I reached up to open up the garage door like I always did, like robotically. I didn't even think about it. But for whatever reason, this morning, I stopped and I turned around and I looked at what was in my garage. On the left was my supercharged Corvette. On the right was an almost brand new Cadillac CTS. And right in the middle was a Yamaha R1 sport bike. And I took a look at all these things, and I asked myself, what in the world am I doing? I'm still unhappy. I'm still not satisfied with what I'm doing with my life, even with all this stuff, even with these cars, even with the house in the suburbs. So I didn't necessarily put all the pieces into place right then, but I knew from that very moment that I could not go through the rest of my life. I could not work like this until I was 60 and then finally enjoy my retirement at that point in my life. I had to make a change. And like I said, that came after a number of months and weeks, well, really months after that point where I slowly started to become more and more of a saver. But then I met my wife and everything changed.
I am more of a saver. I always have been. I wasn't maxing out my 401k, mostly because I didn't know that was a thing. If I had even had somebody else tell me that you could max out your 401k when you started working, I would have done it, because that's just, I don't know, it just was something I didn't even think about. But we met and decided to get married, and we both had houses in the suburbs. We both made very good salaries, especially for Tucson, Arizona, where we were living. And we had to think about, like, so what do we want to do now? We have two very good salaries. We could live like rock stars and have a vacation home somewhere and do it, like, whatever great vacations, do whatever we wanted. Or, since Steve had come to this epiphany and didn't really like his job, we could save the majority of what we were making and quit early. I was a little bit hesitant on the whole early retirement thing, but I was very okay with the let's save lots and lots of money thing. So he had to convince me on the quitting work thing. But
so let me get this straight, Steve. When you had this epiphany, you and Courtney had not even met yet.
That's correct. Yes.
So you're single, I guess?
I was single. Yeah.
And you've got a Corvette and a Cadillac.
Yes, and a racing motorcycle. I had all the toys. I had all the things. Yeah.
We've probably lost half the viewers now who say, yeah, that's what I want. Forget Arizona and the desert. I'll take the Cadillac and the Corvette. So that raises a question. So how many years ago was that epiphany?
Oh, I would say that was in 2012, so almost 10 years ago.
Okay. Have you had, between then, first of all, how long did it take you? I assume at some point along the way you sold the Corvette and the Cadillac.
Oh, absolutely. And the sport bike. The Corvette went first. No, the sport bike went first, then the Corvette, then the Cadillac.
Well, then we also sold both of our homes. So, we sold everything.
We made big changes, but yes.
Okay. And Courtney, did you know Steve when he had the Corvette and the Cadillac?
Yes, he still had them when we met. And then we started, the selling started happening after that.
Have there been, for either of you, even if it was for just a fleeting moment, ever any regrets that you've gotten rid of all of this? Is there even one thing you sold that there was at least one day in your life where you said, man, I wish I could just take the Corvette for a spin for 20 minutes?
The honest answer to that is yes. Yes. There is, like, there's an element of me that misses, riding the motorcycle at the speed limit. I never broke the law. I was always at the speed limit.
Sure you did, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do miss that from time to time, but I think regret is too strong of a word, because I know what I sacrificed in freedom, in lifestyle freedom, in order to own those things and do those things. So while I do occasionally miss doing those things, I certainly don't miss it enough where I regret, or where we regret, going down this road, selling those things and living a more, living a lifestyle that we can really control our time 100% of the time.
And Courtney, what about you? Any regrets?
I didn't really have as many toys as Steve.
She had a RAV4, so that was it.
I'm not into the toys.
Yeah.
So no, not really that many regrets. I think it was harder for me when we moved in. We sold both our homes, which I said, and we moved into an Airstream for a while, and I had to get rid of a lot of things. And my KitchenAid mixer, which I had wanted for so long, I had to get rid of because we couldn't store it. But I just recently got another one this year, so I'm very excited that it's back in my life. So
Nice.
I'm a little bit smaller.
Small things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you guys made this decision, how long did it take you, to get to the point where you could retire? And maybe you could just talk a little bit about that. And also, at what was your highest savings rate during that time?
So we both worked full-time jobs. We both made pretty good money. So combined, we were pulling down about $220,000 combined.
At our highest.
At our highest,
when we
like by the
retired.
end of our careers. We certainly were not doing that our whole career. So the last year, we were making that much money. And we were really amping up our savings. So we were saving at one point 70%. That's 70%, which means we were saving Courtney's, I think it was, entire salary and living on about half of mine. And Courtney can go into a little bit about how those numbers worked out and the budgeting and the Excel spreadsheets that she created, because she's the rocket scientist, not me. She has much more, I think, purview on how all of that went down from a numbers perspective.
Yeah, and Courtney, you were literally a rocket scientist, right?
Yes, my background's aerospace engineering. So
you can probably
I clearly
handle
married up.
Yes, I like spreadsheets a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. We were very aggressive in our savings when during the last couple years of us both working full time. And we did a lot of big things to be that aggressive, including, like we said, we sold our homes, we moved into an airstream, sold most of our possessions.
I'm sorry, you did that while you were still working?
Yes. The last year, last full year of Steve working, and then multiple years, because I went back and did a sabbatical later, of me working. We actually lived in the Airstream. We told no one. So we sold our houses. We moved into the Airstream. Steve was working from home, so it wasn't a huge deal.
For that last year.
I still commuted to work, but no one knew that I was living in a trailer, like at a campground only 15 minutes away. But we wanted to prove to ourselves that we could do it and that it wasn't going to feel like a sacrifice. And it really helped streamline our finances, because we were no longer paying the mortgage. We were no longer paying a lot of things and didn't have room to buy anything. And so we did some pretty different things to streamline our finances. And that enabled us to save a lot of money pretty quickly.
Okay. So were you, in terms of actually making the decision to retire, I assume you had some sort of budget that you expected to spend in retirement, and then from that perhaps backed out a number that you needed to reach. Is that how it worked? Were you using the 4% rule? You're young, so maybe you were maybe using, I don't know, the 3% rule. But how did all of the math work out for you guys?
Yeah, we did start with the 4% rule. I still think that's a good foundation, like a place to start, like just a ballpark of what you need to have accumulated. And based on what we thought we were going to spend in retirement and the 4% rule, we were pretty comfortable with between $800,000 to $900,000 in net worth before we're really comfortable calling it quits.
And even that, so Steve is much more risk tolerant than I am.
That's absolutely true.
So he officially quit in 2016. I went on sabbatical from my job and traveled in the Airstream for 6 months and came back and worked 6 months and then went on another sabbatical. And then during that second sabbatical, actually finally quit, because we had realized we can live the lifestyle we wanted at the prices we wanted to live at. And while we did use the 4% rule and we had that $800,000 minimum as our call it quits number, that was assuming we could keep a very low budget for our life for the foreseeable future, right? Because we are pretty young. So that meant that we wanted to have some backup plans. We both knew we could go back to work if we needed to, but that was the absolute worst case scenario.
Last resort. Absolutely last resort. Yeah.
So there was also trying to make sure there was a little bit of extra income possibilities, or being able to very much control how much we spent. So in the Airstream, that was possible. We could go live off grid and boondock for up to 2 weeks at a time for no money. So not paying anything. We were completely self-contained. And so we could really, really reduce our lifestyle costs down if we needed to. And that was a very important step for us, because if a recession hit and we weren't going to be making any money and we didn't want to pull any out of our stock, we needed to be able to really reduce our lifestyle costs in order to keep staying on the road.
And are you guys low cost, low fee index fund, bogleheads, or
100%. 100%.
Okay.
We spend maybe 5 minutes a month worrying about our investments and where all our money is. I was a big fan of targeted retirement funds, and a lot of people are going to poo-poo that, say, oh, you're not a real investor because you're a targeted retirement guy. You know what? What works for you works for you. I'm not smart enough to pick and choose stocks. I just took the easy route, and quite frankly, it worked for us.
Yeah.
So what's your asset allocation? Are you still in target date retirement funds, a 3-fund portfolio? What do you have today?
Yeah, a lot of we still have a lot of targeted retirement funds, a lot of life strategy funds. We do some crypto as of late. I think we have like 20K in Bitcoin and 1,000 in Ethereum. So, I mean, I like to dabble a little bit in crypto, but I don't want to invest more than 2 or 3% of our net worth because that's so volatile, and I'm just not that comfortable with that yet. But we're very stock heavy, which means when the market's doing well as it is now, we're doing well, but then when the market doesn't do well, that's when we really have to cut back.
And have our emergency savings fund. So
very true.
We keep up at around 2 years worth of living expenses in a savings account, which a lot of people will say that's
the rest in stocks.
Pretty much.
For the most part, yes. Yes.
But that way, when a recession hits or when there's a big dip in the market, we don't have to worry about touching anything. We can live off our savings account for up to 2 years, and it might be a little tight by the end of the second year, but we can do it. Yeah. And that way we don't have that added burden of having to pull out money when it's obviously we would lose a lot.
So let's talk about mechanics. As your 2-year cash fund starts to go down, how do you fill it back up? And how often do you fill it back up, assuming the market hasn't crashed?
Yes. So as long as the market's doing well, I'd say 2 to 3 times a year, I look at how the savings account's doing, what big expenses might be coming our way. So because the market's been doing well, we recently put in a well at our house, and that was going to be a very large expense. And so we knew that was going to drop our savings account drastically. And so I knew last year I needed to take more money out so that we could have that in there and still have our 2-year reserve. So it's just kind of future looking and just trying to keep around 2 years in there at all times to keep me happy and comfortable. Steve could probably have one, but I get nervous. So it's not really a set time. It's more of just as things go.
So Mr. Corvette and motorcycle guy is big into, he loves the risk. It sounds like he thrives on that.
More so than me, for sure.
Yeah, I'm more of an adrenaline junkie for sure than she is. But really, I don't have a problem with 2 years either. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we bought the house that we live in now. It's what I like to call the off-grid recession-proof house. We can live almost as cheaply as we possibly want to here because we have no hookups, we have no ties to utility companies. So, I mean, if we have to hunker down, we obviously won't like doing that. But I think we've set up our lifestyle where we can if we need to.
So just how far down do you have to dig in the desert in Arizona to hit water?
Well, that's an interesting question. We did a lot of research on that last year. Water under our house is at about 320 feet. However, water just 20 minutes from where we live, 20 minutes west, you're almost at 800 feet before you hit water. And a lot of that is because there's a lot of agriculture around here, and big farms are sucking up all that water from aquifers and running them dry. So that's kind of
drought conditions
and
elevation, and it just really depends on where you are. Yeah.
So but luckily, if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to, but what's it cost to put a well that has to go 320 feet down?
For us, it costs us $25,000. And well companies are making bank right now because everybody and their brother wants a well. We waited 8 months for our well. That is how backed up well companies are around here. So they can pretty much charge whatever they want, and people are going to pay for it, including us.
Well, we vacationed about 10 years ago and went through Arizona, and we were on Lake Mead for a day or two. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this was a decade ago, and it's just amazing how much water they've lost.
I know. Well, I mean, we've been in what did they call it? An exceptional drought? Was that what it was called?
Before this year, we were in an exceptional. There's like severe. There's severe, which is a little bit less than exceptional. I don't know. We were at the very like deep red, worst possible circumstances for water, and then we got one of the wettest seasons on record in Arizona this summer. So hopefully that's going to ease a little bit. But we got so much rain this summer.
So you retire, or you retire in 2016. Courtney honestly, what you did kind of matches what I've done in a way, where I retired. No, not yet. Okay, I'm going to retire. No, not yet. But was there any sort of discussion about, well, you know, if we both just worked a couple more years, then instead of LEANFire, which I think is how you described yourselves, we could fire. Or if we did a couple more years after that, who knows? Maybe we could fat fire. How did that, was there any discussion along those lines?
Not even a second for me personally. Oh. A lot of people do fall into the just one more year syndrome. But then it's like there's always going to be a reason. Well, just one more year. Well, if I work one more year, we can get to this part. Or just one more year, we can get to this point. And you just got to call it quits eventually. Naturally, granted, I did that way early because I really did not like what I did for a living. So I was willing to take that risk.
For me, I actually enjoyed my job, which is why I did the sabbaticals. I liked my team. I liked what I did. The biggest issue is I could not take that and do it from home. And we wanted to go and travel on the airstream. Steve was no longer working full time, so we had a lot more flexibility. And my job could not match that flexibility because I probably would have worked part time. I might still be working part time if there was a way I could have done that with my job because I didn't dislike it. I kind of enjoyed parts of it. So that's why I went back and did the sabbaticals.
Maybe he would hire you part time.
Hey, you never know what might happen in the future, right?
It's true.
With his Starlink hooking us up, I guess that's possible. Exactly.
But yeah, the one more year thing, Steve was fine with me going back to work. It would have made us stay in Tucson and
kept us stationary.
And after traveling, that was not something I really wanted to keep doing. So he had a good plan, which was lure me by taking me traveling for 6 months and tell me, go back to work, go ahead. And then I'll be like, yeah, this isn't as much fun as I remember. The traveling was really fun. So
have you had to pull money out of retirement accounts? And if so, how have you gone about doing that?
No, we have not.
So it's all come out of taxable accounts?
Yes, we have a pretty good brokerage account. We were really filling that up a lot in the last few years after we'd maxed out our 401ks. And so that's what we've drawn money from.
So how long did you guys live in the airstream before you bought your current place in Arizona or built it, whatever you did there?
Yep, 3 straight years. 3 years we were homeless. The airstream was it. So, yeah. But we were ready to settle down by the end as well.
We bought this in 2019.
The house
and the land. The house was existing, but it really we had more solar capacity in our airstream than we had at the house. So that was our first major big expense so that we could live here. But we bought it as a home base. The idea was this way, if we didn't want to travel, we still have family in Arizona, we could just be here in the winters because it's great to be here in the winter. And then COVID hit. And being without a home base would have been very difficult. A lot of our friends who are full-time RVers had to stay stationary for a year because campgrounds shut down. No one wanted people traveling between states and all sorts of things. So that kind of cemented us here. And then we learned that we kind of like it and don't really miss traveling yet. So
I don't know why. Have you ever read the book series Wool?
Mm-mm.
I haven't.
WOOL. Oh. Well, for some reason, what you've described, I don't know why it reminds me of Wool, because if you read that series, they lived underground, not above ground. But that's what I picture out in the desert of Arizona. And for those listening who have read it, they'll probably think, Rob, that makes absolutely no sense at all. How hot does it get there in the summer?
Where we are, it gets to, 105-ish. Which is actually not bad. Over in Yuma, you're talking 120, 125 degrees. In Phoenix, 115 degrees, 110 degrees. Tucson's even 110. So where we are is almost like a little reprieve from some of the other areas in the state.
That does mean we do get colder. So we do have below freezing temperatures during the winter, mostly just at night. We normally warm up a pretty good amount, but we're at 4,500 feet. So we have
the high desert.
Yeah, we're the high desert.
Yeah.
So I know you guys have been interviewed a lot, and I'm sure people ask much better questions than I do, but I've just got to ask this question. When you're traveling around in the airstream, how do you get your mail?
We used a mail forwarding service
Called my parents.
Called her parents. but a lot of people do use established mail forwarding service. There's one from an organization called Escapees, which is tailoring to full-time RVers, where that's basically your address, your home address. All the mail gets sent there, and then you just call them up or just fill out a form online or something occasionally, and they will send your mail to a campground or wherever, like a post office box or whatever, wherever you happen to be in the country. So that's what we did informally through her folks, but a lot of people use mail forwarding services to get their mail when they full-time travel.
So Steve's
that's
parents.
good to know.
Yeah, Steve's parents full-time RV'd for
12 years or something like that.
before we started it. So we had a lot of knowledge come from their experiences doing that.
And how all that worked logistically.
Yeah.
Okay. I was looking at your budget that you've posted online, and one of the things that caught my eye was healthcare, because my wife and I are pricing health insurance, and it's going to cost us $2,000 a month. Now, yes, we could get a slightly cheaper policy where we live, and we might spend $1,500 a month. But I think your budget, if I remember, was like $350.
Originally.
Now, maybe it's different today, but how do you manage that?
So originally we were part of Liberty Health Share, which is not insurance, it's the health savings. We switched that this year. So we now are on a traditional health insurance through the Arizona marketplace, but our income is so small that we do get subsidies because of the fact that we no longer work. And so we are paying, actually, I think we're paying less right now than what we were with the health savings
we are.
account. But we'll have to see how that obviously will fluctuate based on if we take a bunch of money out of and we make a lot of capital gains one year or anything like that. So it's all a game now of like how that's going to change. But originally it was the health share, and now we're back on normal. I think it's a gold plan or a silver. I don't remember what plan we're on.
So the other reason why it's so cheap is because we are okay with a high deductible plan because we're young, we're relatively healthy. We don't, go to the doctor all that much. So for us, a high deductible plan is definitely going to be worth it at this point. But a lot of people aren't going to have that freedom, so their costs are going to be higher because they don't want such a high deductible. But that's another reason why we pay really less than our health share was, is because we are okay with that high deductible in exchange for a lower monthly rate.
Yeah, we do the same thing, except that unlike you guys, we're old. So there's that. Courtney, I seem to recall that you've discussed that when you were younger, I guess a child or teenager, there was a bankruptcy that you kind of lived through. If I've got that right. And it turns out I did as well as a kid. So I kind of know what that's like, but I'm curious, do you think what kind of effect did that have on how you handle money and perceive money and risk and all of that
That
today?
would be why I think I am less risk tolerant than Steve, and that I need to have a certain amount of savings available to me. Money that I know we can access right away, because I still have a lack, I think, in terms of, I think of money as lacking or not. What's the right word? I don't have a mindset of not growth. What is it?
Abundance.
Thank you. When it comes to money, I'm working on it because we've been retired.
Not that I know anything about this.
We've been retired for a number of years, and I know the money's not going to run out. I know we have options of making more money. I know I could go back and get my job if I wanted to. But it's still hard to counteract that childhood fear of the money's gone. How are we going to live? So that has been something that I think that's what makes me more risk averse than Steve. But it also provides a nice counterbalance to his risky possibly behavior. So
risky behavior. Really? Wow. I'm not liking the sound of this.
We're going to call that out. It's just, we're going to put that on social media.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can relate to that. Have you found that since you've been retired now for a bit, that you've gotten more and more comfortable with it?
Yes, absolutely. The first year we started traveling in the airstream and I was still going to go back to work, the going back to work was my like, okay, if we fail, we're still okay. And I needed that. But then the next year it was like, okay, well, we did it and we were fine. In fact, we have more money now than when we left, even without working. And so each year I get a little bit more comfortable. We haven't had to ride out a major recession yet. We've had big dips in the market and everything else, but we haven't had a year and a half of down market or anything since we retired. And we know that's a very good possibility going forward. And we'll have to see how I do when that happens. But every year I feel more confident in our decision and knowing that we're going to be okay.
Well, how did you guys handle emotionally the big drop in March of 2020 when it turned out not to last very long, but of course in the middle of it, we didn't know that, and it's like everything shut down. It's like how can 2020 possibly end in a positive territory?
Yeah.
No one's working, right?
Yeah, I mean, in a way we kind of expected it, and it was a little bit easier because there was a clear reason. It was COVID. I mean, things are bad right now, and that's kind of part of living the lifestyle the way we do with such heavy index funds. When market's good, we do good. When market's bad, we do bad. But I mean, everybody kind of knew, or at least I think a lot of people did, that this was just going to be a short-lived thing. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Things are going to recover, and sure enough, they did. But yeah, when you're down over 200 grand, like we were. That's not emotionally, that's kind of a bad thing, especially how fast it happened.
Yeah.
So we cut back a little bit, but
we'll put it that way. I was not in my happy place. I didn't look at it very often. I knew we had plenty in our savings, so I knew we were going to be fine not no matter how long it lasted, but for a good long time.
Yeah.
And I made Steve cut back on a few things, like going out to eat and things like that, because I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to last. But in general, it was okay. And as Steve has said to other people before, a number of people told him he should be pulling out of and moving things during that time. And he was like, that's the point. That's the point. I'm not going to touch it. We have our 2-year savings. We're just going to let this ride and everything will be okay.
Market's crashing, sell everything. My gosh, that is exactly what you don't want to do. And we're up like 150% now because we stayed in. So we're doing way better than we were before the crash. But yeah, timing the market, I'm not smart enough to do that. Most people are not smart enough to do that. And we certainly didn't do that.
Yeah, it's funny how everyone says you shouldn't do that. You should just stick to your investment plan. But then as soon as something bad happens, like all that advice that everyone confidently espoused when the market was going up, all of a sudden gets thrown out the window.
I like to say everybody is an expert in a bull market.
Yeah.
That's all I could say. I mean, when everyone's making money, everybody's a genius. And when things go bad, I mean, I think Warren Buffett said something about when the tide rolls out, that's when you know who's been swimming naked. That's kind of the same thing. The same thing in play here. When things are good,
there are a lot of naked swimmers right now.
There are a lot of naked swimmers right now, and
we just can't see them.
And so some people won't even go into the pool, and that's even worse because you could be making so much money right now. But that's a whole nother topic, I guess.
I always like Mike Tyson's comment. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why you have a plan. Yeah. So when you do get punched in the face, you know what to do.
You should stick with it, but hopefully. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, hopefully. Exactly. Exactly.
So, no one knows the future. It's hard, who knows what tomorrow's going to bring. But do you guys see this, at least as things stand now, this is your sort of forever lifestyle?
We've thought about that a lot. Like, what might be next?
So this is the thing. The Airstream was the foreseeable future lifestyle until it wasn't. And so who knows? We're very open to the fact that 5 years from now, we may decide this isn't for us. But we're setting this up to be for us. So we're making it work exactly the way we want it to. You might be able to see this piece of equipment behind us. This is because we have a home gym here. A squat rack, so that Steve can, because Steve's very into working out and fitness, and there's no, if a grocery store is 45 minutes away, a gym is much farther than that. So we're trying to set this whole thing up to be exactly what we want so that we're happy, and we are happy. And so we have projects we can do, and slowly but surely do them. And I don't know. Yeah, who knows what the future brings, but for now, this is exactly where we want to be.
All I could say is so far so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have family members or friends that gave you a lot of pushback on all of this?
Luckily, no. My dad retired at 49, so he was kind of like the first early retiree in my family. But I had lots of friends who would never do something like this. It's like the furthest thing from their mind. It's just not their thing. But they also didn't give me a bunch of crap when I was doing it either. So, I mean, in their, it's kind of a testament to them. Like, even though they wouldn't have done what I did, they also didn't really criticize me or give me a bunch of crap for it. They just said, okay, if that's your thing, do it. So. What's
funny, though, is that, so I met Steve. And before I met Steve, I'm a engineer, making very good money, living by myself, have a house, everything. And then I meet Steve, and within, 3 years, I quit my job, move into a trailer, and sell everything. And my father used to joke about, my father loved Steve, but he used to joke about how Steve convinced me to, for love, to quit a high-paying job and move into a trailer.
It worked.
Down by the river.
That's funny.
But no, my parents were also very okay with it because they realize my personality, and that I'm risk averse, and I'm very smart with numbers, and how I would never have let us do something that I thought would be a bad idea. And so they were very supportive, as were my friends as well. So we were pretty lucky in the people surrounding us.
All right, one last question. What's like given, your off the grid lifestyle, what's the hardest thing, or maybe the thing you dislike the most about the lifestyle that you guys are living?
Restaurants?
Well, for me, I love going to restaurants. Love it, love it, love it. Everyone there is happy. It's a happy place. Think people are having a good time. I just like being in that kind of environment. But obviously out here, the money part notwithstanding, we just live in a place where there's not a lot of restaurants. There's a couple around, and we try to support those local restaurants as much as we can. But I guess if I really had to pick something that I miss about living a traditional life, it's not the big house in the suburbs. It's not the cars. It's not the motorcycle. It's really just the simple things like going to restaurants and having fun with other people in the restaurant. So it's pretty simple for me.
Yeah. I don't know. For me at this point, we actually have a really awesome community out here. So I feel like we're more connected with people now than we were when we were working, or even when we were traveling. Yeah, and I would guess for me, I like to cook. And since we don't go to restaurants all the time, it's important. And we stock up a pretty good pantry because it's 45 minutes to any grocery store, and to any of the specialty grocery stores or anything like that. In Tucson, it's an hour and a half. And so just having to not have the things that maybe I want to try available to me, that's a little bit tougher. We can't get delivery from a grocery store or run over to the special shop and get this thing. Yeah. It has to be well thought out in advance for that kind
Lots of planning.
There's a lot of planning.
That's where she comes.
Luckily, I like planning, but that would probably be my biggest thing.
Well, good. Well, how can folks that want to follow, your work online, where should they go?
I have a blog, steveadcock.us. We are also on YouTube at A Dream in Life.
Okay.
And I also have an ebook called Big Money. It's it chronicles our journey from a traditional life, working full-time jobs to early retirement, and how we put those pieces into place, how we did our investments, and how all of that worked for us. That's linked to from my blog. And I'm also very, very active on Twitter. That's probably where I spend the majority of my time. And my handle is Steve on Speed, and that has nothing to do with drugs. I created this Twitter profile back when I drove my Corvette. So hence the on speed part. That's where that came from.
Well, great. Well, listen, it's just amazing what you guys have done, and it sounds like you're having a lot of fun. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
You are very welcome. Thanks for having us on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was nice talking to you.